Hey everybody, it's Matt again. We have an awesome lesson for you today. Today we're going to talk about how to actually overcome one of the most difficult areas in sales. And it's all something that we help cause in a sense. Today we're going to talk about openers. Now in the community, when we wanted to start a conversation with a girl, really the key to whether or not we're going to successfully have a conversation with somebody is how the conversation starts. But we're not coming from a neutral standpoint. You see, when we would go out and talk to this very attractive girl, odds are that that particular day that there's probably been a dozen or 24 people that have tried to basically get a conversation with going with her. And over the course of her life, it's been in the thousands. But the problem is 90+% of them are scammy, manipulative, dishonest guys. Odds are that if a guy comes up and talks to me, he's going to be one of these guys that I want nothing to do with. I don't want to waste my time, and I'm just going to immediately get rid of them. And so what do these guys do? They tend to adapt, and they try to come up with some dishonest or manipulative, formulated way for a conversation to get started, hoping to get by her defenses and buy themselves some time and have a conversation. Eventually, it's going to blow up in their face because she's going to realize that the way they were introduced to her is not the person who that guy really is. So at some point in time, it's going to crash and burn. But at least he wants to get past the first round of defenses. Now in the community, we didn't do that. We actually wanted to have a conversation that was genuine, reflected who we are, what our personality was like, and was a lot of fun for these girls. And so what we did was we came up with what we called an opener. And what that means is it's a way for us to just bridge the conversation really easily and at the same time let them know that we're fun, that we're confident, that we're legitimate people that are high value, that she really does want to talk to. In other words, we're one of the very few guys out there that's going to be worth her time. And this was an absolutely crucial part of what you did. You could be a truly high value guy. You have your life together. You've really figured out all the weak points in your life and shored them up. You've developed some really amazing aspects of your life. But if you're trying to talk to a girl who's used to being approached by a bunch of sleazebags, well, you're never going to get past the very, very intro part of meeting her. You're never going to even get a shot. So the whole point of an opener is to allow you to have an opportunity for her to see you as you really are. Now in sales, it's the same thing. The only difference is, as we always talk about, the single women in the community are our prospects in sales. And the same thing applies. The average person will get approached hundreds, if not thousands of times. And 90+% of the time, the person who approaches them is really not worth their time. They're either desperate, they're trying to hawk something that they can get anyplace else in the world, they're dishonest, or really not interesting. But once you get your stuff together, once you've actually developed into a high value person, where it really doesn't matter the product that you're selling, but it's the person who they want to work with, the biggest obstacle is just getting past that intro. And so what do you need? You need an opener. Now, what's the key to an opener? Well, before we get into actually what you want to do, let's talk about some things you don't want to do. And they all revolve around one simple concept. You don't want to do what the mass of humanity is doing. Let me repeat that. You don't want to do what everybody else is doing. Now, it's really tempting to do what everybody else does because there's safety in numbers. Look, if you screw up and all the other people are screwing up, well, you know it's not your fault. It's the system's fault. You're doing something that everybody else is doing, and even if you fail, guess what? You all fail. But the problem is you don't want to be lumped into them. You want to succeed. You want to make a good living. You want to have an easy job where you're not struggling all the time, and you want to wake up every morning knowing your morale is not going to crater at some point in time in the day. And so, again, the key, do not do what everybody else is doing. Now, what do I mean by that? Number one, they start off with the sales pitch. So they'll just go right into it and talk about their product. Number two, they're going to ask you a question to qualify you or to attempt to qualify you. They're going to ask if you have a home, if you have insurance, if you have this or have that. have a retirement plan? Do you currently invest? All these things that immediately tip you off that a sale pitch is coming. Now, the third thing you don't want to do is you don't want to act artificial. So you're not doing something where you're being overly nice, you're not being yourself, you're just being a little bit too polished. And people know that if they meet you at 7 o'clock at night, anywhere in the world, you're not going to be like that. Sometimes it's how you dress, and it's okay to dress well, but sometimes you may try to dress perfectly. And people just know that, number one, when you do that, it's either going to be intimidating or it's going to be something where they know they're not talking to the real you, they're just talking to the daytime you. And people don't like that. Instead, what you want to do is what we did in the community. You want to do the exact opposite of that. You want to do something that is totally unique, that catches them off guard, and that they know that the minute that they hear you and interact with you, that there's no ulterior motive. In the community, we would do that a lot. Now, I'm not going to go through every single opener or type of opener that we did, because you have to be in the community to know that. And I'm not giving up all the goods. Well, at least not now. The one that I actually used the most, that I thought was the most effective, and it was the most congruent for me as a person, was what I called pointing out the violators. And when I go up and talk to a girl, I wouldn't immediately let it be known that, hey, I'm interested in you, but instead, I'm just kind of pulling her into my world and letting her know kind of what my standards are. What I mean by that, and before I would ever talk to her, I was always scoping out the room, not just for women, but for guys as well, everybody. I'm a people watcher. I love doing that. And inevitably, there's somebody that just doesn't know what they're doing. They dress poorly, they have a bad haircut. It could be any number of things where you're just looking at that going, what is going on? And so I kind of store that in the back of my mind. And I said, okay, I'm going to keep that in my back pocket. And I just thought it was funny. Had nothing to do with anybody else. Had really no plan of bringing it up again necessarily. But if I happen to see that in real time and there's a girl that I think, hey, that girl might be interesting to talk to, and they're pretty close together, what I would always do is I would go up to her, tap her on the shoulder, and I'd say, hey, look at that right now. Look at that guy absolutely blatantly trying to hit on that girl, and you know he has no game. And I would basically point out very specific things that I noticed that low quality people wouldn't notice, but high quality people would. And immediately it did two things. Number one, it's going to trigger in her this sense of controversy. You have to see what's going on. It's almost like seeing a really bad wreck on the side of the road. You have to look. And immediately the focus is on that. But on top of that, I'm sitting here giving her play-by-play, interpreting it, letting her that I know specific things that only a high value man would know. And yet I'm subtly picking on it as well. So she knows that whatever happens after that, if she's talking to me, that is not going to be me. I'm not going to be one of these low value guys. And she's automatically preconditioned to want to talk to me. And at the same time, her guard is down. She already knows, not by me telling her, but by me proving it to her, that I'm a high quality man and I'm somebody that she really wants to learn more about. And hence the curiosity gets tripped up. So when you're in sales, it's the same thing. You'll see somebody and you can do the exact same thing. When I was in the call center, I would ask them, how many times have you been called so far? Is it over or under 30? And they would always laugh at that. And they're like, no, it's under 30. I'm like, really? Because I know when I've done stuff where I put my name and number in, I get a boatload of calls. So I would immediately follow up with them and say, let me guess. This is the type of thing you get. The phone rings and this guy's immediately goes cutting right to the chase, trying to sell you on something. And then the next guy's asking you these long lists of boring questions. And all it does is telling you that 7 minutes down the line, if you last that long, he's going to throw a sales pitch on you. Does that sound about right? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to do that. And I would immediately go in to tell them what I did. But at the same time, I'm not actively looking for clients. If I find a great one, I definitely want to work with them. But realistically, more than anything, I'm just making the call. I want to make my manager happy. I don't want him getting on my back, which he kind of sometimes did. It lets them know that I'm not out on the hunt, but it also lets them know that I'm not going to be like all these other people. So this defense mechanism that makes them want to hang up on the other people is completely gone. And when you do this, when you employ the opener, what it does is it preconditions the person you're talking to, one, to want to talk to you, two, to view you as high value, And three, it triggers a sense of curiosity in them where they're going to start asking you questions as opposed to you having to rattle off your questionnaire in the hope of qualifying them and finding out that, hey, they're actually a good client. Instead, they're going to be peppering you with questions, which allows you to dictate the encounter.